On today's episode of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, can Corbin Carroll lead the league in steals next season? Should Zach Gallen be the Cy Young favorite? Checking in on the latest Fanduel odds for the 2024 season.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com to see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Just want to say thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And don't forget, today's podcast is brought to you by Fanduel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, it's so fitting that we're talking about Fanduel, today's sponsor for today's podcast, because we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about regarding Fanduel, because on today's podcast, I want to go through all the Fanduel odds. We'll talk about specific player awards for next year, some the league leaders for next year, futures bets. So we got a whole bunch of futures bets I want to talk about on today's podcast. I actually want to start with the biggest one right at the top of this podcast: World Series odds for the 2024 season. And where do the Arizona Diamondbacks fall into that? Because, of course, the D-backs coming off a World Series appearance where they were ahead of schedule, a World Series appearance where this D-backs team did not feel fully realized, still had holes on the roster, still had stuff to fill in the lineup, still had to upgrade the rotation. Like, this was not a perfect Diamondbacks squad, and yet this team was still able to make it to the World Series. So after coming off a World Series appearance, where does FanDuel have the D-backs slated in terms of odds for the 2024 season? Well, not the prettiest. I will tell you all the teams ahead of the D-backs right now in terms of being higher favorites in the World Series rankings. You got the Dodgers number one, of course, then Braves, Yankees, Astros, Phillies, Rangers, Orioles, Blue Jays, Mariners, Twins, Mets, Cardinals, Rays, and then you got the D-backs at number 14. I cannot believe how disrespectful this is to the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that just came off a World Series appearance, a team that has already upgraded their team through this offseason and is not even done adding. Like, we'll probably do this whole topic and segment again right before opening day. Once the D-backs add a JD Martinez or Jorge Soler, we'll see if the odds change. But as it currently stands, the D-backs being number 14 in these World Series odds, it's ludicrous, to be honest. I understand teams like the Dodgers and the Braves, but even a team like the Yankees at number 3, I know that they got Juan Soto, but I wonder if you guys could hear my cat meowing in the background. I know the Yankees got Juan Soto, but still, the Yankees haven't been a team in true World Series contention in such a long time. You still got some major question marks in that rotation. Can Carlos Rodon rebound? I like the Astros in the number 4 spot. The Astros, I think, deserve to be there year after year. I'm okay with Phillies at number 5. The Rangers just won the World Series, and they're at number 6. The Orioles at 7, they need to build a rotation before you could take the Orioles seriously. Yes, they have a super young core. They got young studs like the Adley Rushmans and the Gunnar Hendersons of the world. But that roster just isn't complete yet, or not even good enough to really compete for a World Series title yet. I don't really mind the Blue Jays ahead of them. The Seattle Mariners, like, how can the Mariners at plus 1,800 have almost twice the odds as the D-backs at plus 3,500. Like, the Mariners have done nothing but sell this offseason. They traded Eugenio Suarez to the Arizona Diamondbacks. This team, the Seattle Mariners, hasn't really improved or added anybody this offseason. Like, what Mariners fan right now is happy with how their offseason has went? They haven't really added any talent in the lineup. Like, their offense needs to be better. Teoscar Hernandez is still a free agent. You trade away Eugenio Suarez. Like, the Mariners, their fan base, I'm sure some analysts thought maybe they were selling off these pieces to get ready for a big fish coming in, and maybe they still are going to go out there and acquire a big fish, either on the open trade market or via trade or through free agency. But as it currently stands with how that team is set up, are the Mariners better than the Arizona Diamondbacks? Definitely not. The Minnesota Twins just got their first playoff win in like 25 years. There's no way the Twins have a better chance of winning the World Series next year than the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Twins, uh, I don't even want to get into the Twins discussion. I think it's insane that they're ahead of the D-backs on this list. The Mets, they're probably a little bit closer to the D-backs, but considering they've spent all that money, they have like the highest luxury tax bill ever that they have to pay this offseason, and they weren't even a playoff team. I think Francisco Lindor is one of the more overrated players in Major League Baseball. I love Pete Alonso, but there are just so many flaws up and down that roster. I think a lot of the moves that they've made the last couple of years have been kind of overrated. I didn't love the way that they, attacked and built their roster with the Mark Cannas of the world, who I never thought was that good. He went out there and got really old pitchers in the Max Scherzers of the world, the Justin Verlanders of the world. They spend a lot of money, but I think they've had poor roster construction the last couple of years. So I do think the New York Mets should probably be behind the Arizona Diamondbacks. Then the St. Louis Cardinals, the team, the biggest disappointment in baseball last year, ahead of the D-backs. Stop it. The Tampa Bay Rays, the expansion brother to the D-backs, as me and Locked On Rays host Yuli Zambrana always discuss, the expansion brothers, Tampa Bay, Arizona Diamondbacks. Well, guess what? Tampa Bay at plus 3,200 should be behind the D-backs at plus 3,500 because, yes, Tampa Bay will win 95 to 100 games next regular season. They will get swept in the wild card round as they do every single year. So I actually think it's insane that the D-backs are number 14 in World Series odds. Right behind them, the San Diego Padres, the Chicago Cubs, the Boston Red Sox. Those teams should be middle of the pack, but the Arizona Diamondbacks, I think, should be, if we're being honest, they should be right behind the Texas Rangers. Like, they should be ahead of the Orioles, the Blue Jays, the Mariners, the Twins, the Mets, the Cardinals. Like, why shouldn't they be with the team that they have, even on paper? Even if you don't count last season, like, just go on paper. You tell me the D-backs don't have a better rotation than the Orioles? You tell me the D-backs lineup doesn't match up with the Orioles lineup? Maybe the Blue Jays rotation is slightly better. I think even the Blue Jays team on paper seems better than the D-backs, but then we actually look at the production from last year, the D-backs players outproduced the Blue Jays players. Same with the Seattle Mariners. I think even on paper, the Mariners aren't a better team than the D-backs, and they produce at a lot lower level than this D-backs team as well. I just don't understand the team coming off a World Series appearance being 14th in World Series odds. And when you look at the odds to win the National League pennant, same thing, doesn't change from the World Series odds. You got the Dodgers 1, Braves 2, Phillies 3, Mets 4, Cardinals 5, D-backs 6 in odds to win the National League pennant next season. They are the reigning National League winners right now, and you got teams like the Cardinals and Mets ahead of them. I'm fine with the Dodgers, Phillies, and Braves being ahead of the D-backs, but I think clearly the D-backs should be at least that number 4 team in this NL power ranking for the pennant odds next season. That's probably the worst way to say it. They should be 4th in odds in the National League pennant rankings of who can win it in the 2024 season. And I think I'm going to go place a little futures bet on the D-backs because these odds are way too ridiculous. Give me the D-backs to win the NL next year and give me the D-backs to win the World Series in 2024. And of course, the best place to place your futures bet is FanDuel Sportsbook because, let me get my little overlay on for my YouTube audience. Where's my FanDuel overlay? There it is. Score early this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining Fanduel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. My favorite thing to do is the same game parlay. Whenever the Lakers are playing a mediocre or below 500 team, I take AD over in points, AD over in rebounds, and the Lakers money line. That money line leg of the parlay has not been hitting recently, but when it does, I love a little extra money in my pocket. So visit fanduel.com/lockdown and kick off the NFL season. Fanduel, official partner of the NFL. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's take a quick peek at the division winner odds for the NL West next season as we continue to look at odds off FanDuel, because right now in the NL West, if you remember last year, the D-backs were fourth in these odds, and they were considerably fourth in terms of, there was a wide gap between the Giants at number 3 and the D-backs at number 4. If you guys remember all the podcasts in the preseason leading up to opening day last year, I was like, listen, I don't know if the D-backs are going to make the playoffs. My prediction entering last year was D-backs going to finish with like 82 wins and finish third in the NL West, because I thought on paper the D-backs were a better team than the Giants last year, and that proved out to be true. This time last year, the Giants had double the odds of the D-backs to win the NL West, and now you look at the odds and it's a lot closer than I think it should be. Dodgers at -300, D-backs plus 700, Padres plus 800, Giants plus 850, and then the Rockies are plus 1200. This time last year, it was like Giants plus 600 to win the NL West, and then it was like D-backs plus 1200. Like, it was disrespectful to the D-backs last year. They thought they were nowhere near the Giants last year. Now you come off a season where the Giants missed the postseason, the D-backs make it to the World Series, and they're still just within 100. They're still within plus 150 of each other. I do think that's kind of crazy, but I do like the respect that the D-backs are getting as the second best team in the NL West, with the San Diego Padres trading away the Juan Sotos of the world. It feels like more number crunching is coming for the Padres. They might be entering blowed up mode over the next few months. I think it's a good bet to see them finish third or fourth. Same with the San Francisco Giants. The Giants don't walk away from this offseason with at least maybe a premier free agent or trade target, some kind of big fish, some kind of star power. Like, go out there and overpay for Cody Bellinger if you really need to, Giants, because they just need something exciting in that building. That franchise just has no life. They're a franchise that's always in the mix. They're not going to bottom out. They're going to win around 80 games. They just need more star power. Logan Webb is a stud, but they have not been able to really develop the internal talent that you need to as a franchise. So they need to go out there and probably sign some free agents. Go out there, get Cody Bellinger. You know what? Go out there and just steal the two Padres. Get Blake Snell, get Josh Hader, just so you can add a little fun and excitement, because I think that San Francisco Giants team is just kind of stuck in purgatory right now. Then, of course, the Colorado Rockies, last place in the NL West. That is a gigantic lock. I wish I could see the reverse rankings for the NL West. If you had the favorite to finish at last in the division, what that would be for the Colorado Rockies, because the Dodgers are -300 to win it. The Rockies would probably be -1200 or -12,000 to lose the division if you had reverse odds on the NL West. Now, this one, we're going to talk about player specials now. This is like, who you think could lead the league in home runs next year? Who you think could lead the league in steals next year? So let's talk about a few of these categories here, because one that I thought was kind of interesting that I didn't see an Arizona Diamondback on is who can lead the league in regular season home runs in 2024? And this is all league. So they got Aaron Judge, number 1. Then they got Matt Olson, Kyle Schwarber, 2 and 3. So this is both the AL and the NL. And I thought it was a little surprising to not see one Arizona Diamondback on this list, because this is a deep, deep list. And as you go farther down, you're like, come on now. Come on now. How's it not? I take it back. There is one Arizona Diamondback on this list. There are about, I gotta do, there's no like number next to the name. So off the top of my head, I want to say there's like 40 to 50 players here. And fifth from the bottom is a Christian Walker. Excuse me, sixth from the bottom is Christian Walker, which I think is a little bit crazy. Like they have Christian Walker behind like Isaac Parodies. They have him behind a Jack Sawinski. They have Christian Walker behind Jazz Chisholm. They have him behind Nolan Gorman. Like I don't think a D-back should be like top 10 on this list of like the 40 to 50 players that they have named. But come on, Christian Walker, you think he's going to have less home runs than a Brandon Drury or Anthony Rizzo next season? They have him even behind a Rhys Hoskins who's coming off the torn ACL. I love Rhys Hoskins, but can he hit more home runs than Christian Walker, who's been over 30 the last 2 years? I don't know. I think it's just a little disrespectful to Christian Walker. I don't think he's going to lead the league in home runs, but I'm just saying it should be a little bit higher. He should be higher than maybe a Spencer Torkelson or a Cal Raleigh. Like some of these names are ahead of a Christian Walker. I think it just absolutely disrespectful, to be honest. So I'm not mad that there's no D-back in the top 5. I'm just mad that the only D-back on this list is in the bottom 6, and I just don't think a Christian Walker should be behind some of these names ahead of him. Now, let's talk about some categories that a D-back could actually lead the league in. I mean, if you do think a D-back could lead the league in strikeouts for a pitcher, Zach Gallen, off the top of my head, he's like 13, 14 on this list of pitchers that could lead the league in strikeouts. I think that's probably accurate. Zach Gallen can run it up with strikeouts, but for him, it's more of a volume play than I think an efficiency play. Like Spencer Strider, if he pitches 180 to 200 innings, like he's the favorite to lead the league in strikeouts. Like he will lead the league in strikeouts. For Zach Gallen, it's more of a, because he only averages like 9 to 10 strikeouts per 9 innings, he's going to have to pitch like 250 innings to potentially lead the league in strikeouts, which he can do. I think he was like top 30 in strikeouts this past season because of the volume of innings he does throw. But a guy like Strider, a guy like Garrett Cole, a guy like Tyler Glasnow, those guys pitch 30 plus starts. Those guys will lead the league in strikeouts over Zach Gallen. So I'm not mad at all for Zach Gallen only being in the teens on that list. And then this is one where a D-back can actually win it, lead the league in stolen bases in 2024. We got our guy Corbin Carroll, number 3 on this list, and it's just perfect. I mean, of course, Ronald Acuna Jr., number 1 on this list. Not a surprise at all. He should be the favorite coming off that 70 stolen base season. I mean, absolutely electric. I love the fact that the stolen base is back in baseball. When you talk about adding a little bit more excitement to the game, a little bit more flavor, stolen base is one of the things that we need to see a little bit more of. We got a little bit too 3 true outcome with the home runs, the strikeouts, or the walks. We needed more elements, more dimension to the game. And I think all the new rule changes, which have benefited the stolen base, just adds a little bit more excitement. Got a little bit more chaos, a little bit more havoc on the bases. Not everything is home run dependent. Now you can have guys like Corbin Carroll and Ella De La Cruz go from first to third to potentially home in one sequence, which I think is just so much more exciting. So Ronald Acuna Jr. definitely should be the favorite. I don't mind Esteury Ruiz, number 2, but then Corbin Carroll plus 550 at number 3 might be pretty sweet odds to bet on. Then after Corbin Carroll, you got Ella De La Cruz and Bobby Witt Jr., 2 guys who are very formidable too in terms of team speed as well. So Corbin Carroll potentially leading the league in steals is probably the most likely outcome of all these stat categories that a D-back could win. But there were a few more. There was at least one more that I did find kind of interesting. The last one that I did find kind of interesting that we'll wrap up on for segment number 2 is the saves. Who can lead the league in saves in 2024? I found this one interesting because for the first time in a long time, we got an Arizona Diamondback on this list. We got Manuel Clase 1, Josh Hader 2, Edwin Diaz 3, David Bednar 4, and then at number 5, tied for number 5, we got Paul Sewald of the Arizona Diamondbacks, which just has to bring a smile to your face if you're a D-backs fan, because we have been searching for a legit closer for the longest time. And Paul Sewald, I don't think is better than a Clase or Josh Hader, but he might just get every single save opportunity that the D-backs have this year. And Paul Sewald might get you 55 saves just because he might have 85 opportunities next year. Like, I think any save opportunity the D-backs get, they're going to throw Paul Sewald out there, because when they acquired him at the trade deadline last year, wasn't there like a stretch where it's like 11 of the 13 games, like Paul Sewald had like a save opportunity? Like, the dude is a workhorse. He is nails, and I love having a real closer finally on this D-back squad. Shout out Paul Sewald, and shout out his opportunity to lead the league in saves, and hopefully Corbin Carroll can lead the league in steals in 2024. But did you know Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube? Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let's wrap it up by discussing some player awards here. We're going to discuss the MVP and the National League Cy Young Award. We're going to start with the NL MVP first. And on this list, we do see an Arizona Diamondback. We see a couple of Arizona Diamondbacks, but to my liking, way too low on the list, because number one, Ronald Acuna Jr. should be the favorite coming off the season he's having. 2, we got Mookie Betts. 3, we got Freddie Freeman. 4 is Shohei Ohtani, where he's not going to be a pitcher next season. So if you do get the batter version of Ohtani this past year for the full course of 162 for the full course of 162 games, a little bit of a tongue twister for me there. If you get just the position player from 2023 for 162 games in 2024, Shohei Ohtani, that guy can win MVP, because just the position player Ohtani last year was the best player in the sport, even without the pitching. So that guy can win MVP. Got Matt Olson 5th, Fernando Tatis Jr. 6th, Bryce Harper 7th, Trey Turner 8th, and then you got Corbin Carroll number 9. Now, listen, all the dudes ahead of Corbin Carroll are definitely deserving. Like, I'm not going to get mad that Tatis or Freddie Freeman or Betts or Bryce Harper are ahead of Corbin Carroll, because those guys are legit studs. But Corbin Carroll, if we're being honest, he should probably be a little bit higher than plus 2,200, tied with Trey Turner at plus 2,200, because Bryce Harper at plus 1,200, then Corbin Carroll at plus 2,200. Like, Corbin Carroll should be on a Bryce Harper level. Like, Corbin Carroll should probably have the same odds as Harper and Fernando Tatis at plus 1,200, and maybe even higher than that. You could make the argument Corbin Carroll should have higher odds than a Shohei Ohtani, and maybe be tied with Freddie Freeman at plus 900, because unless we're forgetting, Corbin Carroll was already top 5 in MVP voting this last season, and 25 home runs of the guys we just named who can hit 25 home runs on this list. All of them, from Acuna Jr. to Trey Turner, all of them have 25 home run potential. But how many of those guys also have 50 plus stolen base potential? I think you would say Acuna. I think you would say Fernando Tatis, and then you would say Trey Turner. So just the guys that could do what Corbin Carroll does, there's only like 4 of them. And so that's why I'm like, Corbin Carroll should at least be top 4, top 5 in MVP voting. There's only a handful of guys in the sport that could do what Corbin Carroll is doing. And the only one that could do it at a high level like Corbin Carroll is probably Acuna Jr. or Fernando Tatis Jr. Guys that can legit hit 25 to 40 home runs and steal 45 to 70 stolen bases. Those are probably the only 3 guys that could do it. And Fernando Tatis Jr., I don't think he's as quick as a Carroll or Acuna. He still could get you 30 plus stolen bases, but I just don't think his top end speed is as quick as those 2. But even with that being said, he's still super dynamic. But is he as dynamic as a Corbin Carroll? Maybe, maybe not. I think it's super close. I think it's close enough that they should be tied for NL MVP odds in 2024. So I'm not mad Corbin Carroll's number 9 at plus 2,200, because the list is so deep, so many good players in the National League. But when consider how dynamic Corbin Carroll is, the season he's already coming off of, I think he should be a lot higher than 9th in the MVP odds for 2024. And then let's talk about the Cy Young. National League Cy Young. This one, maybe you don't feel as bad on. Zach Gallen, number 4. We got Spencer Strider, the favorite at number 1. Then Zach Wheeler, Logan Webb, Corbin Burns, and then Zach Gallen at plus 1,300. Corbin Burns is plus 1,200, and Logan Webb is plus 1,000. But to be honest, I kind of feel like Zach Gallen should be the favorite for the Cy Young entering next season. Listen, number 5 in the Cy Young odds is not too bad. I mean, Strider's probably going to lead the league in strikeouts. Zach Wheeler has been arguably the favorite the last couple years. Logan Webb is a stud, so is Corbin Burns. But Zach Gallen, I think, has been more in the mix for the Cy Young than any of these pitchers. Like, if you think cumulatively, who's been the best National League pitcher the last 2 years, I think you say Zach Gallen. If you go the last 4 years, since he's come to Arizona, who's been the best NL pitcher since Zach Gallen has been with the D-backs, you can still make the argument that it is Zach Gallen. The way he started his career with the first 25 starts, not giving up over 2 earned runs. Then he had the scoreless inning streak a couple seasons ago. Last year, he was the Cy Young favorite for 70% of the season. Like, you go year by year, Zach Gallen has been arguably the second or third best pitcher every single season. I think he's been right in the mix every single season. Like, I think he's been more in the Cy Young mix the last few years than probably a Logan Webb, than even probably a Spencer Strider or Zach Wheeler. Last year, Corbin Burns wasn't himself. So if we're looking at guys on the rise who are in their prime, who have been in the mix for the Cy Young the last few years, I think Zach Gallen is actually the best candidate to do it. And I actually think the fact that he slowed down in the second half of last year and kind of lost himself the award, the way he just kind of gave it up at the end, I think Zach Gallen is going to have a chip on his shoulder to finish what he started and have a complete season where he looks dominant from start to finish. Because if we got 2022 Zach Gallen, he would have won the award last season. But unfortunately, Zach Gallen, the last couple months of the season, struggled, and that's why he lost the Cy Young Award. But I'm hoping next year we get a complete 33 starts out of Zach Gallen where he looks dominant from start to finish. I'm hoping he has like a 2.5 ERA, 200 innings pitched, 200 strikeouts, and he just blows the field away, because Gallen has that level of arm talent. But it won't be easy. You got Yamamoto now in the NL. You got Tyler Glass now in the NL. The competition is probably going to be a little tougher than it was last year. But I think Zach Gallen is as good as anyone to win the Cy Young, and Corbin Carroll is definitely as good as anyone to win the MVP in 2024. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back. I don't think I'm going to do another pod this week, so come back next week for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.